couple of days ago, I put out a post where I said I wanted to know what your horror movie hot takes are. What are your unpopular opinions? What do you feel like you're alone on an island with your opinion for this movie or this franchise or anything about it? And I wanted you all to comment as many unpopular takes as you could so that I could go through and just give my 2 cents on them. I'm not here to even argue with you guys. I'm just curious to know what your hot takes are because we all have them. We all have some kind of unpopular opinion about a big movie franchise or about a specific horror movie that makes everyone turn their heads at us and go, what the hell are you even talking about? And that's what I wanted this video to be. I actually got 112 comments, which is amazing. Thank you guys. And if this video does well, we'll do more fun video experiments like this where maybe it'll be different genres or, just some kind of variation of this style of video. But without any further ado, let's get right into it with the top comment here, which comes from Luke Loden 420. And he says, the 2009 Friday the 13th is very solid. I have good memories of the first time that I watched it. The acting has that 2000s camp, and Jason was depicted faithfully. I'm younger, so maybe that's why, but it's a nostalgic horror movie for me, and it can't be said for other 2000 horror remakes. So I don't think that you're too alone in this one. I don't think that this is so much of an unpopular opinion because I do see that the 2009 Friday the 13th movie is praised quite a bit. I'm kind of in the middle of the road with it. Like there's a lot of people out there that will legitimately say that the 2009 Friday the 13th movie is the best Friday the 13th movie. I don't agree with that because I don't think it gives you that old school sort of very grimy, gritty, dirty experience. I think it's a very polished movie. It looks a little bit too good sometimes to be a Friday the 13th movie. But having said that, I do enjoy it as well. I have some gripes with it here or there, particularly the ending, but mostly I do think it's a really good movie. So I agree with you. I do think it's solid. I do like the campy acting. And the fact that it's nostalgic for you is awesome, man. Like, we all have those horror movies that we watched when we were younger that make us nostalgic. And so, yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think it's a very solid movie. I don't think it's the best, but I don't think it's nearly the worst either. Next one from Dave Jean-Pierre 2617 that says, I believe that Dr. Sleep is the most underrated horror film of the 21st century. And you know what, my guy? I agree with you 1,000%. 1,000%. I love Dr. Sleep, and that movie blew me away the first time I saw it. I wasn't even expecting that much from it. I'd read a little bit of the book at that point, but I didn't know that movie was going to be as captivating as it was to me. It has a lot of haters. It has a lot of detractors, which I'm sure is why you're saying that it's underrated, and I agree. I think it's extremely underrated. It didn't perform well at the box office when it came out, but I think as time has gone on, a lot of people have gravitated towards it more and more. Ewan McGregor gives a stellar performance along with Rose the Hat, played by what's her name, Rebecca Ferguson. Yes. Also incredible atmosphere in that movie. I love the depiction of how they used The Shining, and also I think one of the most horrific kill scenes in any modern horror movie that involves a young boy. Like, that is such a disturbing scene, not in terms of gore, but just in terms of having this small child screaming out for help while all these weird gypsies absorb his essence. You know what I mean? It's fucked up. And I love how the movie is able to be both a sequel to the Shining movie, but also accurately adapt the book, because the Dr. Sleep book, is based on the Stephen King novel, and the Kubrick movie changed a whole lot of things about the novel, including when the hotel gets burned down. So they're able to kind of draw from both source materials and somehow land and I think satisfy fans of both. Like, I think if you are a fan of the Shining movie, Dr. Sleep is a wonderful companion piece film. I don't even consider it really to be a sequel. I mean, I guess technically is, but to me, it's just another story in that universe, But I also think that if you're a fan of the book, it definitely adapts it pretty damn well. So yes, I love Dr. Sleep, one of my all-time favorites. So I'm with you there, man. All right, next one. From Seth Nash says, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and Child's Play 3 are very underrated and are one of the best in both franchises. So yeah, so this one, I definitely think that you're not alone. Like I think this is a semi underrated opinion because I have seen a lot of people say that those movies are their favorites in the franchise. For me, both of them are kind of like mid tier. Like above Elm Street 2, I would put 4, 3, 1. New Nightmare, Freddy versus Jason. So it very is like middle of the road. And Child's Play 3, again, like I'd put the original 2, Bride of Chucky, probably Curse of Chucky above it as well. So they're not the worst for me. I don't put them at the very bottom. And I do think Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is, I would say it is underrated. It's just in a franchise where there's so many great movies that I do rank a lot of the others above it. But I like Elm Street 2 quite a bit. I am a big fan of it, just not one of my all-time favorites. Next one from Brandon says, hot take, Elm Street 2 has the best Freddy Krueger design of the franchise. So once again, I kind of agree with you. Freddy does go through a bunch of variations in his design, but I think the Elm Street 2 kind of hit the peak of Freddy, at least when it comes to making him look imposing and scary. I think that after that, you know, the budgets got higher, and also, you know, they're making Robert Englund more comfortable in the makeup. So by the time you get to Elm Street 5 and 6, the makeup doesn't really look that good anymore, and it doesn't look scary at all. But I think Elm Street 2 and Elm Street 1, the original, you know, it had to work with the budget that it had. It was the first time they were doing Freddy. So I think Elm Street 2 and 3 kind of hit the peak of Freddy design. I think that's when it's like, we know what we're doing, and before it got a little bit too goofy. Also, Elm Street 2 does give us the only moment, really, where Freddy's claws are real. Like, once he comes into the real world, he's not wearing the glove. He just has, like, the extended fingernails, which is pretty awesome. So, yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think Elm Street 2 does have a pretty gnarly Freddy design. Next one from Pigpen says, Halloween Kills is by far the best of the Legacy sequel trilogy. Over-the-top slashing and a solid plot. Halloween 2018 is just too boring, and I don't find Old Lady Laurie that interesting, and Ends is just atrocious. I also love Halloween Resurrection and Jason Takes Manhattan. They're not good in a traditional sense, but I think that they're really fun popcorn, shut your brain off type films. Busta Rhymes taking down Michael and then karate kicking him out the window is, I'm assuming you mean, amazing. But once again, when it comes to the Blumhouse trilogy, I agree with you in that Halloween Kills is the best of the 3. And that probably is an unpopular opinion because I get flack for that all the time. But I do agree with you. I think Halloween 2018, although it has some really great shots and obviously great music, John Carpenter, all that kind of stuff, I'm not really big on the story of that movie, and I don't see the point of including Laurie if they're not connecting them to be siblings anymore. It just seems kind of out of place. I buy Laurie's PTSD in Halloween H2O way more than I do in Halloween 2018. It just seems a little bit over the top, and, you know, that she would be that obsessed and that crazy about it, whereas in Halloween H2O she would have more of an incentive to be like that. So I think H2O handles it like way more realistically, and I also think that 2018 has a lot of humor that just does not land. Like, the whole movie, there's like a joke every 10 minutes and I don't understand why. And then, yeah, Ends is atrocious. I agree with you there. Halloween Kills at least has fun with the concept of being a slasher movie. It has tons of great kills. It's Michael just being as powerful as he ever was, just going ham on all of Haddonfield. I don't even hate the Evil Dies Tonight stuff. Like, people give that a lot of shit, and I kind of like the idea behind it. I don't think the execution was amazing, but the fact that an entire town would be paranoid to the point where, like, you know, they are becoming almost just as psychotic, like they're going after any kind of scapegoat that they can find, that they're kind of tearing each other apart during the process of this. I like those ideas. So, yeah, even though overall the Blumhouse trilogy just is a bit of a mixed bag and kind of lets me down, but if I had to choose one of them to stand out from the rest, it definitely is Halloween Kills. So next one comes from Pooty Head, who says, Found footage horror is among the best horror. Change my mind. Well, I'm not interested in changing your mind, but I do definitely disagree with that. I think found footage is one of my least favorite genres of any movie experience. Horror movies, any type of genre. I am not a fan of found footage. Now, obviously, like with everything in life, there are exceptions to the rule. There are some found footage movies that I like, but more often than not, I can't stand that genre. I can't stand the shaky camera. I can't stand cameras right up in somebody's face and them like moving like a cell phone in their hands and you can barely tell what's going on. When I watch a movie, I don't get scared by not being able to know what's going on. Like, it's not scary to me when cameras are super close up to someone's face and they're breathing heavy and it's shaking all around. I'm not sitting there thinking like, oh my God, like where are they? What's going on? I'm really thinking like, this is annoying. I can't see anything. And I don't really like the aesthetic style of missing things that are happening. Like, oh, the camera's looking over here and something's happening off screen. And, oh, I just missed it and I have to move the camera and it's shaking all around. And it's just a genre, a style, an aesthetic choice that does not vibe for me. There is always exceptions to the rule. There's some of the segments in the VHS films I like. There's a movie called The Sacrament that I like a lot, but more often than not, I just hate found footage horror movies. It's one of my all-time least favorite genres of horror. Next up, we have Quandreon, who says Halloween Resurrection is one of the best unintentional comedies that I've ever seen. I can understand this take. Halloween Resurrection is my all-time least favorite Halloween movie, and mostly because it completely shits all over and ruins the perfect ending of Halloween H2O. Like, all I need is, that final confrontation with Michael and Laurie chopping off Michael's head, end of franchise, I'm good. And then Halloween Resurrection comes along and just completely shits all over that movie, tries to do this convoluted explanation of, oh, Michael actually switched the masks and does all of this stuff that Michael's never done before. Not to mention at the end of H2O, you literally have plenty of opportunities for the paramedic to take the mask off himself, and he never does. And then it goes into this full, again, found footage reality TV show, what was popular in the early 2000s, with a bunch of characters we don't give a shit about, doesn't follow up on Josh Hartnett's character, doesn't follow up on anything other than killing Laurie off in the first 5 minutes in the most unceremonious way possible. Just cannot stand that movie. But having said all that, from the perspective of watching it as a comedy, I can at least understand why people like it, okay? Like, I get it. Like, I am deeply offended by that movie. But, like, I can understand people liking it as a comedy. So, it's all good. If you like Halloween Resurrection, I get it. Trick or treat, motherfucker. Next question from Vampire says, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake is so much better than the original because there's way more to the story, more interesting characters, especially the protagonist, and a scarier and cooler Leatherface. The original is also great, and I appreciate its gritty atmosphere. I just prefer the remake for the reasons I've said. I don't agree, but I understand. That's kind of where a lot of these unpopular opinions are going to land with me. Is like, I don't agree, but I understand. I think that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake is very good. I think it is one of the better remakes out there as far as just being a good movie. I'd put it on the same tier as Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, as the 2009 Friday the 13th that had the same director, some of the better horror remakes that are out there. But I don't think it's anywhere close to the original, because the original just has a specific vibe to it that I think has never been recaptured. And kind of similar to the Friday the 13th, like the 03 Texas Chainsaw, very good, but it is very polished. It's very clean. It's very like Hollywood movie. And the thing that gravitates, I think, a lot of people to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is just how grimy and filthy it feels. Like, it feels like something you shouldn't be watching. It feels like somebody that just took a camera out in the middle of nowhere and just started recording people getting killed. It has a particular atmosphere to it that it just has never really been replicated in any of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remakes or sequels, but really in any horror movie ever. I mean, I think about the score of the 74 Texas Chainsaw and how it's just like grinding metal and sounds of a slaughterhouse and how it doesn't really have any music to it. Like, why has no other horror movie ever really done that? There's probably examples, but I can't think of any. And the dinner sequence, the dinner scene at the end of the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of those moments where, and granted, I first watched the movie when I was like 12, but like, it's one of the few times I've ever had to pause a movie because I was too freaked out, you know? Like, all of those close-up shots of Sally's eyes and just the fact that these cannibals are sitting down at a table and laughing at her and mocking her, and she's tied to a chair and she can't do anything, and it's so horrific. It is just one of those movies that I think is like a pinnacle of the genre. But I will say that, yeah, I think that the Leatherface in the '03 Texas Chainsaw is badass. Like, I do think it is one of the better Leatherfaces. I'm not saying it's better than the original, but if you want a scary, terrifying version of Leatherface, '03 is kind of the first one that I think of. So there is that. So you know, you're not alone in that. There are other people that like the remake more, but yeah, to me, nothing compares to that original, man. Zodcast says, Night of the Living Dead is a boring piece of media that does nothing but tick off every cliche. Oh, God. Okay, all right. I'm going to handle this with a grain of salt. The reason that Night of the Living Dead feels cliche is because that was the template zombie movie that pretty much every piece of zombie media has drawn inspiration from over the past 50, 60 years. Like, it hits all the cliches because it made the cliches. Like, that is the reason, like, we have the type of zombie media that we have today. If it were not for Night of the Living Dead, zombie movies would not be what they were. In fact, Night of the Living Dead didn't even call them zombies because that wasn't even the established genre yet. You know, they called them ghouls, and then they became zombies over time. So, man, I think that, look, boring. I think this might be one of the issues of, like, people having a harder time watching older movies, but you have to understand, like, back then, like, that was George Romero's first movie, and the reason that most of it takes place inside of a house with a small cast has to do for budget, it has to do for the first time ever making a movie, has to do with really being this claustrophobic look at how people interact with one another during these desperate situations. And a lot of the zombie stuff was the first time this was really being brought to the screen. Like, you have to imagine back in 1968, people seeing corpses rising from the ground, ripping people apart and eating their guts. Like, that was something that had never been done before. And it also leads me to a point where I think when you watch movies, I really do think you have to think about them a little bit in the context of the time period that they came out. Because obviously, if you watch Night of the Living Dead now and you've seen the Walking Dead TV show and you've seen, you know, Train to Busan and World War Z, and you've seen, like, all the zombie movies that have come after it, yeah, it might feel a little lackluster, you know, it might feel a little slow, right? But, like, it's because Night of the Living Dead that all of those things can exist. And back in 1968, that shit was shocking as hell. And so, like, you know, I always think about that. Like, I can watch older horror movies and have a perfectly fine time with it, where if a modern movie did the same thing, I might think it was slow. But given the time period that it came out and understanding budget limitations and understanding the creative workarounds that people had to come up with back in the day, it's a different kind of experience. So, yeah, I don't agree with this at all. Night of the Living Dead is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. But we're all free to have our opinions. Okay, So, next one comes from Canem Meme Deep Dive. Says, Nightmare on Elm Street 4 is unironically my favorite Elm Street movie and top 10 horror movies for me. I think it's still got a lot of genuine horror moments of the first movie while also being funny. It was sad to see Dream Warrior's characters go, but it was a ballsy move that I can appreciate. Love Alice and Dan as the final couple that, and the kills were creative as hell. So, I'm in the middle on this one because I like Nightmare on Elm Street 4 a lot. I think it is a really great, fun movie. But there are plenty, like I said, I would put Nightmare on Elm Street 3, New Nightmare, Freddy vs. Jason, and the original all above 4. I think 4 is where it does start to shift into a direction that I don't appreciate as much. Like, I still like all of the Elm Street movies, but 4 is the one that definitely gets a lot wackier, a lot sillier. And yeah, killing off the Dream Warriors character was a bit of a bummer because you spend an entire movie, getting to know, getting attached to those characters, and you really like them. And it's a horror series, so with sequels, characters are bound to die. But the fact that they were all killed off, one after another so instantaneously in that movie was a bit disappointing. However, to your point, I think Alice is a great lead character, and I really like her and her performance in those movies, and I do have a lot of fun with Nightmare on Elm Street 4, and you're right, the kills are very creative. At that point in the series, they had the budget and they had the draw to be able to get as wild and wacky as they could. You have the girl that gets turned into the cockroach. You have, you're such a meatball in the pizza shop. You have a lot of great creative kills, so I think it's a good movie, and if it's one of your favorites, there's nothing wrong with that, man. Next one comes from Isaiah that says, dope idea, Ryan. I think 7 is my best horror/thriller movie. So I don't think that's an unpopular opinion in the sense that 7 is a very widely regarded great film. But I don't know if I would call 7 a horror movie. Definitely a thriller. There's definitely horrific moments in it, but it's definitely more of a crime drama thriller, more along the line of like David Fincher's Zodiac, like those two movies he made definitely fit together as like a double bill. So, all right, next one comes from Cloud Bloom, who says, Camp Crystal Lake seems like a serene, pleasant place to spend a weekend with your fellow co-ed high school buddies for summer fun and plenty of swimming. I agree. I would go there too. Ragnaraden says, The Boxer's Omen should be considered a fucking classic. I got to admit, I don't know what that is. The Boxer's Omen. I know what The Omen is. Okay, so I did a Google search, and the first thing that I saw was this. And now I have to watch this movie. The Boxer's Omen. Okay, thank you for the recommendation. I don't know what that is, but that seems like something I would enjoy. All right. Okay, next one comes from Cloud TX. He says, here are mine. Halloween 2018 is the best in the series. Okay. Saw 5 is the best in the franchise, especially the freaking ending. In the Mouth of Madness is the best horror movie of the 90s. Interesting. And American Werewolf in London is a solid movie, but not a masterpiece. Wow. Okay. All right. Those are some hot takes. Some hot takes, man. Halloween 2018 being the best in the series, I gotta hear more explanation on that, because even if you like the movie, right, and I think it's okay. I think it's okay, but like, even if you really love the movie, how on earth is it better than the original? How is it better than Halloween 2? How is it better than Season of the Witch, Halloween 4? I don't know, man. I don't know. Interesting take there. But I don't get it. Saw 5. Okay, so I have to admit, you guys got to pull my horror card because I haven't seen any of the Saw movies past part 4. I know. I get shit for it all the time. So I haven't seen Saw 5. And In the Mouth of Madness, best horror movie of the 90s. It is a great movie. I actually just rewatched it not that long ago. John Carpenter. Best of the 90s, though, because then you also have Scream. You also have Dead Alive. You can make an argument for Candyman. You got some good movies in there, but yeah, In the Mouth of Madness, I'm not mad at that take. And then this one, though, American Werewolf in London is a solid movie, but not a masterpiece. I think the problem is there's not a ton of great werewolf movies. There are some, there are plenty, but not as many as like, zombies or vampires or some of the other horror creatures. And I think American Werewolf in London really stands out because in terms of werewolf movies, I do think it's one of the best. But you think it's a solid movie, not a masterpiece. That's fair. I'd be curious to hear the reasons why. But I think when it comes to werewolf movies, it's like top three. You know what I mean? Like, what else would you put up there? Like The Howling or Ginger Snaps or the original Wolfman? Like, like American Werewolf is the one. That's the go-to, right? Next one from Josh says that meta horror is overplayed. It was great in movies like Scream and Cabin in the Woods, for example, but a lot of filmmakers have become too obsessed with subverting or calling out tropes instead of actually innovating. I agree with you, actually. I think that self-referential stuff can be good, but I think there's way too much of it now. And I do think that one of the drawbacks of Scream was that style of making horror movies became so incredibly popular that it started to sort of become the norm. And I feel like we need to get back to sincerity in a lot of movies. Like, let things be cheesy, let things be corny. Sometimes let things be formulaic, like sometimes that's okay. We don't need to call out and reference and make a quippy joke about every single trope and idea and theme that we have going on in our films. And sometimes we can just play it straight and we don't need to make a comment or a reference on something that's happening. We can just let the scene play out and let it be fun. All right, next one from Kuki I don't know how to pronounce that. In my opinion, we should get a proper The Thing sequel, not the stuff that we got. When you break down the ending to Carpenter's The Thing, you start to realize that one of the two surviving characters is just the Thing pretending to be a human, drinking gasoline out of the bottle like it's no big deal. Yes, the ever debated ending of The Thing. So I think that at this point, it's too late to do a sequel to The Thing with those characters because it's just been so many years later. Like, I like it better as a standalone movie. And then there was the prequel, obviously. But, fun fact is there was actually a video game of The Thing. It was a PS2 game, but it got remastered not too long ago. I played it recently. And it actually is a sequel to The Thing, and it's a really good sequel. And it has John Carpenter's seal of approval. In fact, John Carpenter makes a cameo as a character in the game. And it does give you the answer to Childs or MacReady being the Thing. And it does have tons of awesome action in it. And the game plays on the idea of paranoia because you have to have other like NPCs in the game that you have to decide if you want to trust, if you want to give them a gun, if you want to argue with them. You need them to perform certain tasks, so you have to like win them over. Like it's really creative that the way that they went about making the game. And I would say the best sequel to The Thing is The Thing video game. I highly, highly recommend it. Next one comes from Doolittle, says Hereditary was a slog to get through. Damn. I hear a lot of shit about Hereditary all the time, but I gotta be honest, I think that is legitimately one of the best modern horror movies. Like, I don't know what you consider modern now, because I think it came out like 6 or 7 years ago. Time flies by way too goddamn fast, but I don't know what other people saw in that movie, but for me personally, I loved Hereditary. That movie scared the shit out of me in a way that I feel like I haven't been scared since I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre when I was 12. Like, that shot where they're looking down the hallway and there's that cult of like naked people in the distance that you can barely see. I watched that movie at like 11 p.m. at night and it literally scared me to go to the bathroom. Like, I was looking down the hallway and I was like, that empty water bottle over there is looking pretty damn good right now. like I didn't want to go out of my room. That movie scared me. So, people say Hereditary sucks. They say it's boring, yada, yada, yada. For me personally, it worked on every level. Maybe I was just in the right state of mind. I haven't rewatched it for years, but I love that movie. So I don't see how people say it's boring. I think it's intense. I think that the human element of it, like Toni Collette's performance is just fantastic, believable. The other thing I love about that movie is like There's no supernatural shit in your face until the second half. Like, obviously there's stuff going on in the background the whole film, but what I love is how grounded and realistic the first half is, which to me I think makes the supernatural stuff scarier in the second half because we're already locked into a world that feels real. So anyways, yeah, I love Hereditary, but I know a lot of people don't like it. Augustus Maximus says horror movies should be more messed up. Things like child death, rape, etc. Much more scary. The demons with black scleros and yellow irises. That's why things like Cross Comics Universe is perhaps the only one where I would seriously consider taking the easy way out instead of thinking I could be a hero and defeat the big bad monster. So, I mean, it seems just like you enjoy a particular style of horror movies, which is, grounded, realistic stuff that can happen. When you look at, like, the type of movie you're describing to me reminds me of, like, Last House on the Left or Hills Have Eyes or I Spit on Your Grave or I recently did watch the director of The Substance, her first movie, Revenge. Felt like that kind of movie, like that sort of like sex revenge thriller, grounded, sort of horror film. So there are movies that scratch that itch that you're looking for, but they aren't as, mainstream or promoted, obviously, probably because of the subject matter, but they're out there. There's a lot of them from probably the 70s and the 80s, I think, that would give you the fix that you need. And, those kind of movies, they have a time and place. They're not necessarily my favorite. But, sometimes, I do get an urge for something horrific that's a little bit more grounded, a little bit more real. So, yeah. So I get where you're coming from. Next one is Deeks Bogard says, Final Girls should always survive. We spend the whole movie watching her fight for her life. So in the movies where they're killed off, it feels like a bit of a ripoff. It depends on the movie for me, but I would agree in the sense that I think sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes I think that people don't know how to end their movies and they want to end on a scare. And so they completely wipe away the last 90 minutes and have the main character get killed off as the final shot or the final moment, Sometimes it works perfectly fine, but there are those instances where it does feel like, why? Why do we need to do that? It's like you did spend this entire movie watching this person struggle and get stronger and survive, and they get killed off at the end. So sometimes it can definitely be annoying. I get more, like, my biggest pet peeve is when you kill a character off in between movies, and you don't even get to see it happen. Alien 3 or something like that. Like, that bugs the shit out of me. Like, if you're going to kill a main character, at least let me see it. So that would be my biggest pet peeve. Next one comes from Cyberbrack, who says, hot take, Freddy's Dead is awesome as a horror comedy. When wanting to just enjoy a fun movie in the background, it really can't be beat by the rest of the series. It is a good horror comedy, you know what I mean? So, like, I agree with you there, but it's definitely my least favorite Freddy movie by far. I do prefer my Freddy to be dark humor, but more on the horror side. Like, I really do think Nightmare on Elm Street 1, 2, and 3 are the best balance of that. 4 is when it starts to get a little bit too silly. And then 5 and 6, I do definitely think are way too silly. However, they both still have good moments. I do enjoy aspects of those films. With Freddy's Dead, I do like the idea that the entire town of Springwood has basically become this barren wasteland that's somehow completely repopulated in the next 10 years in Freddy vs. Jason, and it's just a normal functioning town now. But anyways, yeah, Freddy's Dead, it doesn't do it for me. And if I'm going to watch a horror comedy, there's plenty others I would pick before it, like American Werewolf in London or Army of Darkness or, something like that, Return of the Living Dead. So, yeah, but if you enjoy it, man, that's all that matters. Next one from Pulsar Flux says that horror should be more ambiguous more often. I hate showing the monster because it takes all the scare factors away and makes a movie where you never see the monster. Make a movie where you never see the monster, but it's still ever presently there, like It Comes at Night. Interesting. I haven't seen It Comes at Night, so I can't comment on that. There are good examples of movies where you don't really see the monster. I think for me personally, I do prefer to see it more often than not, but once again, it depends on the movie. I think every movie has, you know, its own tone and its own story that it's trying to tell. And in some of those stories, it can definitely benefit to see the monster a lot more. And in others, maybe keep it in the background. And then some movies, you know, there's reasons why they didn't, because like the shark in Jaws, you know, famously, they couldn't get the animatronic to work the way that they wanted to. So you don't really see Jaws that much, but it works brilliantly. And then other movies like, you know, John Carpenter's The Thing, like you seeing the monster lit very well on screen and it looks amazing and I love it. So it just depends on the movie to me. And I don't think that it should be more often, in either direction. I think it just depends on the movie. Next one from Daniel Henryon says, Shyamalan's Signs is one of the most technically scary films of all time. Interesting. When you say technically scary, do you mean like the filmmaking style of it? Or do you mean like from like if I'm attached to some device that monitors my scares, I'm technically the most scared watching that? I don't know what you mean, but I love Signs. Signs is great. I don't find Signs that scary personally, but it does have some shots, like obviously the video footage of the alien walking that gets everybody. And it's more one of those movies that makes you creeped out in the thoughts of like what could be going on around you, you know, what could be happening right now that you have to figure out. Next one comes from Gardenhead92, who says, the American remake of Let Me In is better than the original Let the Right One In. They're both great, though. You know what? I agree with you. This is one of those rare moments where I honestly prefer the remake. And I know that this is an unpopular opinion, and I know this because anytime I've ever said that or mentioned it, again, people like rake me over the coals for this one. I like Let Me In better. I just think it and I can't even really explain why. It just, to me, has a better atmosphere. I just love the look of the movie. It makes me on edge more. It just makes me feel dirtier and eerier and creepier. Like I just think the scares are better. I think the horror is better. The story is amazing, and Let the Right One In obviously told it first and probably told it the best, but there's a feeling and a vibe of Let Me In, the American remake, that I just prefer it. It just gives me this like creepy, cozy feeling, and I can't really put my finger on why. I'm really bad at explaining this. I have no like legitimate logical reason to give you. All I can say is it just gives me a better horror feeling. Like I just feel like it's a creepier movie. And that's basically why. Next one comes from Mick Kringle Dingle. Nice. Who says, most Japanese horror movie actors are too over-exaggeratory and it removes any horror element that was present. Interesting. I don't agree. I can't really even think of an example where they went too over the top. Yeah, I'm thinking about like Audition. I'm thinking about the original Ringu. Like I can't think of maybe I need to watch more Japanese horror movies because I can't think of one that I've seen that I thought the actors were over exaggeratory. So interesting. Next one comes from Beals Quill, who says, I like Michael Myers having supernatural culty stuff, just not the execution. Oh, you know what? I kind of agree with this. I don't hate the idea of having like the Thorn curse and everything. It's just that Halloween 6 is such a shitty fucking movie that it ruined any idea. Like okay, here's my unpopular opinion too, is that I like Halloween 5 a lot. I like Halloween 4 and 5 a lot. And I like all of the mystery that Halloween 5 sets up. I like the Thorn tattoo. I like, the man in black just kind of wandering around. Like it has enough elements there that gets me curious about what it could all mean. But then the execution in Halloween 6 is terrible. And then a lot of people say that the producer's cut of Halloween 6 is better. Dude, it is so much fucking worse. It is so much worse. At least in the theatrical cut, Michael Myers is like, I don't give a shit about this cult and just kills everybody. In the producer's cut, Michael Myers gets stopped by a bunch of rocks and he's just a puppet and a pawn of the Thorn cult that goes and apparently banged his niece. Like, is that what we want? You know, at least in the theatrical cut, you never know who the father is of Jamie's child, and I prefer it that way. In the producer's cut, they're like, oh yeah, we just mind controlled Michael Myers to bang his own niece. The dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. So like, you know, I would be more on board with this idea of there being a curse of the Thorn, you know, I'd prefer no explanation of Michael being how he is, but if they're going to do it, I'm fine with that. You know, it's just the idea of this cult monitoring Michael and giving him commands and using him like a lapdog. Like, you don't want to take the agency away from Michael. Like, you can't build up a character that's so iconic and terrifying and then just say, oh yeah, he's just a pawn of these other people that you're just meeting now that you don't give a shit about. Like, let Michael have agency. Let him have control over his decisions, right? Even if it's a curse giving him his power, still have something unique and interesting about Michael that makes him say, nah, fuck you guys. I do what I want to do. You know, using the curse for his own agenda, whatever that may be. So I don't mind the culty stuff, but yeah, the execution's terrible. I agree with you. Next one comes from Izzy Itachi, who says, elevated horror is a pretentious term made and used by pretentious people to make them feel better about watching / enjoying horror movies. Ooh, yeah, I like this one. You have a point there. I don't like the term either. I think it is a very pretentious term. Here's the double-edged sword, is that the word pretentious, right? One of my favorite quotes is from Francis Ford Coppola that says, like, he says something along the lines of, when you're making a movie, you got to take the risk of being pretentious because you have to create the type of art that you want to make. And then if it's perceived as pretentious, then so be it. So I kind of think when it comes to the word pretentious, I kind of think like, it is what it is. If it's pretentious, it's pretentious. I don't give a shit. It's just somebody trying to make their movie. But I do agree with you in the sense that, like, there are some people that think they're too good for certain types of horror movies where it's like it has to be a critically acclaimed, you know, elevated horror. Like they can only watch, you know, The Babadook or Get Out or something where it's like, oh, this is approved. This has the social proof of the critics and the Academy and everything. So then I can enjoy the horror movie instead of just being able to enjoy it on their own, just as a movie, right? Like it's like they need to have it be something prestigious. It's got to be Rosemary's Baby. It's got to be The Exorcist. It's got to be Jaws. It's got to be like, it's got to be up there, right? For people to enjoy it. And instead of them really dipping their toe in the water of horror and discovering all the potential awesome movies that they could like. Fangirl says the Terrifier movies are extremely overrated just for the sake of gore and for pushing things to the limit. Also, Art the Clown feels more or less like a poor man's Pennywise mixed with Joker. Ooh, whoa, you're gonna make some people mad. Look, I love the Terrifier movies. And I'll say this. I'll say the first Terrifier movie did not impress me that much when I first saw it. I was a little bit distracted while I was watching it. But I think Terrifier 2 and 3 have done a great job at expanding that world and that lore, and Art the Clown and Sienna Shaw. I think, in my opinion, Sienna Shaw is like the best modern day final girl. I love Terrifier 2. And I love Terrifier 3, but Terrifier 2 is still my favorite. And I do think that a lot of Terrifier is shock. A lot of it is gore. A lot of it is meant to be over the top and ridiculous and push the limits and all that kind of stuff. But I also do think it does have good characters. And maybe I'm in the minority on that, but I do think Sienna and her brother have a great dynamic. I think she is, like I said, shaping up to be, if not already, on the Mount Rushmore of final girls. And I do like Art the Clown. I do like his attitude and how he has fun with what he does. And I do think that he is terrifying, but he really right now is single-handedly representing modern day slashers. Like, other than reboots and remakes, there's not really another original slasher that's going on right now. And yeah, I like the Terrifier movies, but there are a lot of people out there that immediately dismiss them just as gore porn, and I can understand. Look, gore isn't for everybody, right? Even me. Like, there's tons of movies with tons of gore that I love, but there's some, it depends on the type of movie. Like, there's some movies that I don't want to watch. Like, I can't do movies that do like animal cruelty in them, like Cannibal Holocaust, like movies that have actually filmed that. Like, I can't sit through that. There's also some like body horror movies that get under my skin that I, might not necessarily rewatch over and over again. So it depends on the type of movie. And the Terrifier movies are definitely, pushing the gore. They're pushing the envelope of special practical effects, and that's not for everybody. And I don't think that's a bad thing, and I don't think like, oh, you're a pussy if you can't watch it or something. Like, they're for particular types of people that are into that, and not everybody is. But I also don't think that the Terrifier movies should be dismissed as only gore, because I do think they have good characters and fun moments, and are filmed very well, at least part 2 and 3, and I think they're getting better made as they go along. So yeah, I like the Terrifier movies, so I'll just end it with that. Next one here from Nimbus says, another thing, I'm kind of growing tired of horror movies being made as allegories to mental illness. It's kind of oversaturated. It's oftentimes ends up being bland or predictable. It's hard to make a movie in that space that hasn't already been done. A bit more to explain, I watched The Curse of Humpty Dumpty recently, and the film was overly frustrating, made me realize I just don't like that direction to tell stories anymore, especially because most of the time it comes off as rather disingenuous. The Lady in the Yard, for instance. It does seem to be a little bit of a modern trend where horror movies are, doubling down on the themes of mental illness and grief and trauma and recovery and that sort of stuff. But I do think that that's something that's always kind of been there. But I'm a guy that just loves good stories and good characters. And if that character arc is to overcome some kind of pain in their past or something like that, I'll be on board for a good story as long as it's presented well and I like the characters at hand. But I think this might go hand in hand with the elevated horror comment. Just the fact that it's like, you think that the only time you can make a good or artistic horror movie is if you're including these elements, which is not the case. What you need is great characters, suspense, good atmosphere, and just something that's going to land with your audience, like something that you want to be able to tell, you want to be able to express, that's going to resonate with people, and mental illness is something that a lot of people relate to. And so, those movies tend to do very well, but I'd say any type of horror, any specific type of horror can get to a point where it's overdone. I mean, it's happened with all of the trends of the past, right? So I think that we might be in the trend right now where it's like, the allegory to mental illness style elevated horror is getting to that point where it's getting to be a bit exhausting, and maybe we just want to see a good slasher stab a bunch of people instead. All right, next one is from 7951, who says, I wish every horror franchise had a Season of the Witch, the weird one that gets meta, goes strange in interesting places, doesn't always work out like Prometheus, but at least it won't be the bad guy comes back, kills people reference. Also, please review Flesh and Blood, Ryan. Kiss, kiss. Well, thank you. Yeah, Season of the Witch, man. I always wonder what the Halloween franchise would look like now if Season of the Witch was a success. For anybody that doesn't know, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, decided to go in a completely different direction. They killed Michael Myers at the end of part 2, supposedly. And they wanted to change it into an anthology where every Halloween, you got a Halloween movie based around the concept of Halloween in some way, shape, or form, but every movie was going to be different. So Season of the Witch was an experiment. It didn't work out, but over the years, a lot of people have rediscovered Season of the Witch and love it as a great horror movie. And I do think it's a great horror movie. I don't think it's a masterpiece. Like, some people are like, yo, Season of the Witch is like top 5 horror movies of all time. Best Halloween in the franchise. at that point, I'd be like, I don't know, let's pump the brakes a little bit there, man. But it's a good movie. You know, it's a badass movie. Tom Atkins, man. Bunch of robots. But yeah, there's always a risk, you know, in doing something like that. A lot of franchises have tried to deviate and do something completely different, and people don't like it. And there's plenty of examples for me where a franchise tried to do something completely different and I didn't like it, you know? So you can't please everybody. And I do respect creative swings. I do respect people trying something and trying to be creative. But I also do think when you're really deep in a franchise, you know, like maybe not the third movie, but if you're like 5, 6, 7, 8 movies deep, there is sort of like a legacy that you need to respect there in some way, shape, or form. So that by that point, it gets a lot harder to deviate. But third movie, I think you're still in a good place where you can kind of like test the waters and try something different. And they tried, it just didn't work there. But I like Season of the Witch. Lord Devilfish says Gojira 1954, that's the original Godzilla film, if anybody doesn't know, is a horror movie. Just one that is focused on establishing fear through allegory, apocalyptic imagery, and a sense of existential helplessness, with Godzilla being a symptom of mankind not understanding its connection to nature, and militarism unearthing incomprehensible forces. Horror can be interpersonal, such as with the majority of slasher media, but existentialism is just as important. Godzilla belongs alongside works of fiction like H.P. Lovecraft and George Romero's Dead series as pieces of existential horror dealing with the same themes of unknown, beyond reason, and insignificance. A fantastic sentence structure there, my friend. I would say yes. I agree. I think that Godzilla is a horror movie, or at least horror adjacent. I mean, you are dealing with a giant monster devastating a city and killing, you know, thousands, millions of people, perhaps. So, and it is playing on the fears of the time period. Once again, like when you go back, I really do think that part of your brain has to think about the context of when the movie came out, because Godzilla was, of course, representing what the country had gone through just barely 10 years before, you know, dealing with the aftermath of the atomic bomb and the devastation that happened with Japan. And Godzilla as a film really is a response to that. And so, especially, you know, when the Japanese people watched that movie back in 1954, there was one thing on their mind above everything else. And you don't really get more horrific than that. And it does have to deal with humanity, you know, not respecting nature around them and, you know, having that hubris of creating something, you know, incomprehensibly destructive in the world. You know, Dr. Serizawa's whole arc in that film is that he's created something that could potentially kill Godzilla. But once he shows it to the world and releases it to the world, you know, mankind can use that for even more terrible devastation. So what does he do? You know, it's this moral conflict of the movie. And so I would say that, yeah, as silly or child friendly as Godzilla might get after that movie, I really do agree with you that the original can definitely 100% be considered a horror movie. Toby says that 2025 is the best year we've had in horror in a long time. That's an interesting take, because I do think there are good horror movies that came out this year. Weapons and 28 Years Later, Together. You know, there's good horror movies, but I would say 2024, last year, you had The Substance, you had Nosferatu, you had Terrifier 3, you had Alien Romulus, you had a bunch of great horror films in 2024. So far, I think better than 2025, but I do think that the 2020s has been a pretty excellent year for movies. I think that a while from now, maybe like a decade or two, people are going to look back and be like, the 2020s were actually pretty great. All right, next one is from Michael Evans, who says, Halloween 4 is the first horror movie I ever saw. I've always loved it. I rank it above John Carpenter's Halloween. Ooh, spicy take. But, you know, nostalgia and our attachment to movies based upon when we see them and what they mean to us is a very special thing. You know, so I feel like where you're coming from is just because Halloween 4 was the first horror movie that you saw. It meant a lot to you. It holds a special place in your heart. So I feel like you're not saying that it's a better made movie than the original Halloween. Maybe you are. I don't know. But it feels more like to me you're saying, like, this is my favorite. I rank it above the original because it's special to me. And there's nothing wrong with that, you know? I have plenty of movie examples like that as well, so I don't really have a problem with that. And I love Halloween 4, so. Keskeg says that The Shining is overrated AF, and no, Jack being crazy from the very beginning is not the main issue. It's just mid. Not mid in it sucks, but legitimately an average 5 out of 10. I don't find the tension to be tension at all. It's slow and boring. Its direction is the best part, but without the behind the camera BS, I think no one would say it's as good as they currently do. It's just the Kubrick name, nothing more. Dr. Sleep is a way better movie, but underrated. Oh, the irony. Ooh, man, is that a hot take? The Shining, look, I love Dr. Sleep, man, but The Shining is literally an all-timer, man. This is it's wild to me. Now, once again, finding a movie boring, that's going to depend on your preferences, and once again, I hope it's not the idea that just because the movie is older, takes its time, is more and slow and methodical with what it does, that's the reason that you find it boring. But just on like a technical level, like the way that the movie is set up, the way that the shots are done, the steady cam movements, Jack Nicholson's performance, Shelley Duvall's performance, I mean, there's nothing really mid about that movie. Maybe you could say that it's a mid Kubrick movie, which still is like a great movie, but I'm trying to think of like what is mid about it, what you would find mid about it, other than I guess that you don't find it to have tension and you find it boring, which I guess that's enough. But man, I definitely don't agree with that. I really do think The Shining is definitely an experience to be had. I think it's an all-timer. I do think it's one of the greats. It's, you know, I always go between that and 2001 as my favorite Kubrick movie. So, yeah, it's up there pretty high for me, man. So, respect the opinion, but I cannot agree. Next one comes from Caleb Wells, who says, I've never seen Terrifier. I bet it's really awesome and I would like it. I have no intention of seeing Terrifier. Well, like I said, it's you know, it's not everybody's cup of tea. So if you think that you would like it, I mean, give it a shot, maybe, but be prepared. Rich says, I still know what you did last summer is better than the original. I wish I could have a response to this, but I honestly have not seen Still Know What You Did Last Summer since, like, whenever it came out. That was never a franchise I was super big on. I always liked the original, and I've watched it periodically from time to time, but the sequels, other than the new one that just came out, I don't remember them, man. I don't even think I've seen the third one, and I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. I've probably seen one time, unfortunately, so I just, I don't know. Maybe you're right. Let's just go with that. Next one from HW Jabber, who says, Halloween Ends is the best movie of the Blumhouse trilogy. The biggest issues with it are a manipulative marketing and a lack of setup beforehand, but the impact alone dwarfs anything in Halloween 2018 and Kills, which are basic legacy sequels. Okay. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 is easily the second best Michael Myers movie. Hold on. I gotta, hold on. All right. I know I need caffeine for this one. Hang on. All right. What else you got? What else you got? Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth, is an atrocious Hellraiser movie that screwed over the franchise as a whole. Well, I agree with that one. Number 4, Jason Goes to Hell is easily top 3 Friday the 13th films in terms of quality. All right. What else you got? My Bloody Valentine, 1981, is the best 80s slasher. That one's not that bad. I mean, it's a good movie. I don't think it's the best, but... Oh, man, those other takes, man. Holy shit. Okay. All right. let's do this. Let's do this. First of all, Halloween Ends is the best movie of the Blumhouse trilogy. All right. I can understand this one. All right, bear with me. All right, I hate that movie, but I can understand this one because you are right that Halloween 2018 and Kills are pretty basic legacy sequels. I have issues with the whole trilogy. You know, I would rank them Kills 2018, then Ends, but I have issues with the whole trilogy overall. So I'm not big on the Blumhouse movies. I think each of them have something good about them, but overall, you know, I could take it or leave it. Ends at least takes the boldest swing. It's a swing that doesn't work for me at all, but I can at least respect the idea of a swing. But I think it's terrible for so many more reasons than that. So many more reasons. Where do you even begin? I mean, it doesn't even respect where the last two movies left off and what Kills sets up. It doesn't make any sense for Laurie's character to just be living in the middle of Haddonfield after she was in a literal fortress in 2018, terrified for 40 years that Michael Myers might escape, even though he was in an asylum the entire time. And then in Halloween Ends, she knows for a legitimate fact that Michael is on the loose, and she just lives like normal. It's not a big deal. And, you know, she has like a little revolver in her desk drawer and that's all she has. It's like, okay, she might be waiting for him to show up, but like she literally had a trap set for him in 2018. And in this one, she's just like, yeah, I'm just going to keep this revolver in my desk. It'll be fine. There's no chemistry between Corey and, forgive me, is it Allison? It's Laurie's granddaughter. No chemistry whatsoever. So much time focused on Corey as the new killer, which, again, doesn't even seem to begin to follow in the themes of what Halloween is even about, because, like, the whole aspect of the town turning on Corey and vilifying him and turning him into a killer, or unleashing that part of himself, you know, the evil changes forms or whatever, doesn't even co-align with Michael Myers at all, because Michael was never like that. The town never made him into a killer. He just was a killer. They show Michael at his most powerful at the end of Halloween Kills, implying that he is this unstoppable force, and then he's just like an old man, like creeping around a sewer in Halloween Ends. And then they don't even commit to the idea of having Corey take the mantle and become the new killer of evil changes forms, because at the end they have Michael come back and kill Corey, and just to have the final confrontation with Laurie once again. Oh my God, I hate that movie so much. But anyways, let's go on to the next one. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 is also a movie that I hate. Again, I'll give it at least the respect it deserves for having a creative swing, but I don't understand what Rob was doing in that movie. First of all, the first 25 minutes are just a dream sequence, which is annoying as fuck. And then they have Laurie, like his depiction of Laurie's mental trauma is the most over-exaggerated, bonkers, like annoying thing to witness, where the whole movie she is just shouting at everybody and everything, and her voice is like nails on a chalkboard to me, and I cannot stand it. I can't stand to listen to her in that movie. Turning Loomis into an absolute dipshit dork. I couldn't stand that. Having Michael just, in like the Rob Zombie insert character with the beard and having him speak. And all the dream sequences, because now Michael is attached to his mom. So I don't. Oh my God, I can't stand that movie. But you know what? I respect you having an opinion. What else we got? Hellraiser 3. I agree with you. Hellraiser 3 sucks. Hellraiser 3. I don't like any of the Hellraiser sequels, man. I'm going to make a Hellraiser video soon, so you'll get all my opinions on them. And I just literally, I'm not even kidding you, as of recording this video, I just literally rewatched Hellraiser 2 like a day ago with my girlfriend, because I showed her the first Hellraiser because I love that movie. Hellraiser, the original, is like top 3 horror movies of all time, in my opinion. I love Hellraiser, which makes me hate the sequels even more because of how much I love the first movie. But we watched Hellraiser together, the first one. She loved it, and I was like, yes. And she's like, let's watch Hellraiser 2. And I was like, are you sure? And a lot of people like Hellraiser 2. And I think it has some good aspects to it. It's the best sequel of the Hellraiser franchise. But every time I watch Hellraiser 2, I want to love it. I want to see what other people see in it. I want to think it's a great movie, but it just does so many things that piss me off that I just can't love it. I want to. Every time I watch Hellraiser 2, there's scenes that I like, there's ideas that I like, but it does more that I hate than what I like. And then by Hellraiser 3, then it just starts to go down. But, I haven't watched those movies, like past Hellraiser 2. I haven't watched in years and years. So I'm about to go through them all again, which is crazy. I don't know if I'm ready. As far as Jason Goes to Hell, top 3 Friday the 13th films, that's another film that I despise. I think it just spits all over the lore of the previous Jason Friday the 13th movies. It goes way too far in the opposite direction of trying to do its own thing and fails miserably. I hate the characters. Everyone says the bounty hunter character is a badass. He's the dumbest person in that whole movie that literally this entire time has all of this extensive knowledge of how Jason and his resurrection and his family connections work, but he doesn't do anything with that information. And then he gets himself thrown in jail where there would have been no possible way that he would have known that what happens at the jail happens for him to escape later on. So it really doesn't make any sense. And he never does anything. Like he has a lot of like monologues where he's talking like a badass, but he never actually does anything. And then when Jason finally does come back, he's like struggling to kill the weakest character of the movie. Like the whole movie is shown to be super strong and cutting people in half and whatever. But then like he is struggling to kill, I forget what's his name, the lead male protagonist of the movie. And like the body swapping thing. And then of course, don't even get me started on the Jason as a Deadite bullshit. I can't even go into that right now. But look, here's the thing. I feel like reading these comments though, that you really love movies that go in like an opposite direction of the status quo. Like Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, Jason Goes to Hell, Halloween Ends. It really feels like what you like is when a franchise does the complete opposite of what it's used to doing. So it feels like that you really like these bold swings, but for you, those swings hit, like they actually work. For me, a lot of these specific ones that you mentioned do not. But there's nothing wrong with that, right? So I adamantly disagree with those. But, you are free to love all of those movies, my friend. And thank you for giving some good content to the people by those takes. As far as My Bloody Valentine goes, this is a good movie. I don't think it's the best of the 80s, but it's pretty good. Anyways, next one is from Martin, who says, Hellraiser has so much untapped potential as a TV series, especially if they adapt material from the comics. The Halloween franchise needs to be buried for at least 20 years while we get another Elm Street project. I agree that Hellraiser has tons and tons of untapped potential. I don't know if specifically for a TV series, but the trailer for that video game, Hellraiser Revival, I think a video game survival horror series is absolutely where Hellraiser would thrive. I think that's a fantastic... I want that game to be good because I want more Hellraiser games. And I want it to inspire them to make more horror video games that aren't just the asymmetrical online player, match-based thing that Friday the 13th and Evil Dead and Texas Chainsaw were. Like, I want story-based games in these universes. I think Hellraiser, I think Nightmare on Elm Street just are begging to be adapted into video games. And so, like, I'm with you there. As far as Halloween... Yeah, as much as I love my boy Michael, I really don't know what else you can do with that franchise right now, because at this point, like, the original film is about to be 50 years old soon. So if you still try to connect it in canon with the original, you're going to have a really, really hard time. I mean, we already have Michael himself being like in his 70s, you know what I mean? So it's like, you're going to have to reboot. But if you reboot, then it's like, you're doing a remake again, and we got to do Laurie Strode again. It's like, what are we going to do here, man? So that's a tough one. I think I would prefer focus to be on Hellraiser or Even Elm Street, I'm not really big on getting a reboot of. I think we're okay without it, but like over Halloween at this point, it probably does need it more. Next one is from Misty Peaks, who says, not sure how hot of a take this is, but I would love more disabled representation in horror. Not really disabled, I just can't bend my spine because of spinal surgery I had, and it would be cool to see someone like that in a horror movie. Just gotta pivot the hips to dodge the slasher swing. Another thing about horror movies that I really love as well is because I think that you do kind of get the most amount of representation of various groups of people in horror. I think it's the genre that's most likely to do it. I'm really sad that I can't think off the top of my head like good disabled representations in horror, unless you just count characters that have like lost an arm or something, like Ash or another character like that. But like yeah, I think there definitely is room for more, and I think that horror is definitely the genre to do that. I think more than any other genre, horror really does represent like the most amount of people. Like you could probably find a horror movie that has what you're looking for in terms of any of that out there somewhere. I can't think of any off the top of my head that have like really great disabled representation, but I'm sure there's plenty of examples, and probably like once I'm done filming the video I'll think of something. But yeah, I'm with you there. I would love to see it as well, and I think that horror is the genre to do it. From Squatch Fan says, Scream is my favorite horror franchise, but people being stabbed multiple times and still having the ability to fight, climb ladders really annoys me. I've always wondered how zombies are able to rip stomach opens with their bare hands, frail, shuffling, decomposing corpses with superhuman strength. Yes, that second point I'll let slide just because it's really fucking awesome when zombies rip people open, so I'll let that go. But the first one, yeah, Scream characters surviving has always been a problem, and I think it's at its peak right now. Because with the new Scream movies, 5 and 6, you have that character Chad, who was stabbed multiple times in Scream 5 and stabbed multiple times in Scream 6 by 2 different Ghostface at the same time and is somehow still alive. It's to the point where you can't help but think some of these characters just have superhuman abilities, because how are they constantly surviving multiple stab wounds movie after movie after movie? Yeah, I think that if they bring those characters back, they gotta go. They gotta go, man. Lane Peaks just says, Them Season 1. I'll have to look into that. I have not watched that. Jeff Flight says, none for me at the moment. Just want to thank you for your awesome reviews. You're very fun to listen to. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Thank you, bro. Thank you, man. It's what keeps me going. Justin Gannock says, personally, I feel that the demon possession genre is overplayed and drastically overhyped / overrated. The Exorcist is to blame to this, in my opinion. They've basically all been copying that formula since then and haven't attempted anything remotely original with it. So, I don't heavily disagree with this take. I think that there are lots of exorcism possession movies that follow the same exact standard formula of The Exorcist. And I think it's one of those genres that's really hard to do differently. Like, I look at The Exorcist kind of the same way I look at Jaws, where it's like, you did that genre so perfect. How can anybody even really do anything different? Like what other shark movie besides like Deep Blue Sea is actually great, What other exorcism movie? I think that The Taking of Deborah Logan is really creepy. I think that, there might be another exorcism movie in there somewhere that I like. But if I'm going to watch an exorcism movie, if I'm going to watch a possession movie, it's probably going to be The Exorcist. Just like if I'm going to watch a shark movie, it's probably gonna be Jaws. Chris Polo says, when I was a kid, I enjoyed Freddy vs. Jason, but in this day and age, rewatching it, I realized that it's actually whack, cheesy, corny, not really a good film. It was trash. Alien vs. Predator, on the other hand, is more entertaining fan service flick than Freddy vs. Jason. 1000% disagree. 1000% disagree. I love Freddy versus Jason. I think that movie is so much fun. I think that it's entertaining from start to finish. I think that it is one of the best interpretations of Freddy. I think that Robert Englund is such a fucking asshole in that movie, or Freddy, not the actor himself. I think Freddy is such a dick in that movie. I think they do justice to both franchises, and it delivers on the premise. You get lots of Freddy versus Jason. They don't just hold it into the last 5 minutes. You get Freddy versus Jason in the dream world. You get Freddy versus Jason at Crystal Lake. You get them ripping each other's limbs out. You get Freddy poking Jason's eyes out. You get everything you could possibly want. You get a regular, just standard slasher movie with a cast of teen characters that get killed off one by one. You have good kills, good gore, good action, good soundtrack. I love that movie to death. I stand on the hill of Freddy versus Jason. Look, is it a little bit cheesy, a little bit corny? Sure. But is Nightmare on Elm Street 4, 5, 6 a little bit cheesy, a little bit corny? Yeah. Is Friday the 13th, 4, 5, 6, 7, a little bit cheesy, a little bit corny? Yeah, it's in line with both franchises. I love that film. I adore Freddy vs. Jason. It is ridiculously entertaining to me and way better than Alien vs. Predator. My guy. Next one from Sprawls says Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974 is the best slasher movie of all time. I don't really think that's an unpopular opinion. I think that a lot of people would agree with you. I mean, as far as slasher movies go, I would probably put a few ahead of it, but yeah, it's up there pretty high, man, for sure. Hot take, the 2006 remake of Black Christmas is better than the original. Okay. A lot of people make the argument that showing Billy at the start of the movie defeats the whole purpose, as the original never revealed Billy. But all of the 2006 remake always felt more like a traditional horror movie to me, and the backstory they gave Billy was one of the darkest things I've ever seen. Also, R.I.P. Michelle Trachtenberg. She played one of the main characters in the 2006 remake. Yes, rest in peace to her. She's also Dawn in Buffy the Vampire Slayer that I just got done rewatching. I watched all 3 Black Christmas movies back to back last year when I was making a video review, and the 2006 one is the one I remember the least. Because I remember the 1974 one because it's a masterpiece. And I remember the 2019 one because it's a goddamn garbage fire piece of shit. But the 2006 one is just so in the middle. Like, it's just, it's not like a train wreck of a movie, but there's nothing special about it. Like, there's nothing about that movie that stands out to me at all, other than the cast. But besides that, I just don't see how anything about it is better. And yeah, unfortunately, I do agree that showing the revealing Billy was a bad idea for the remake. I think that it works much better with him just kind of being this creepy force in the shadows, rather than making him like into a full flesh character with a backstory and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I definitely don't agree with this one. But hey, it's all good. It's all good. All right, next one is Brightest Day. He says, here's a hot take. I don't like the Halloween movies. For me, Jason is the best silent slasher in a mask from that time period. I guess there's nothing wrong with that. I would say, I mean, for me personally, I like the Halloween franchise a bit more. But I guess if you're going to, if you just want to pick one, you don't want to watch all these slasher movies. You don't want to watch all these sequels. It's like, I want my guy, my slasher, stick with that. And you pick Jason. That's not a bad pick. Cruda says, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is highly overrated. Protagonists are almost all unlikable, and the famous dinner scene is made almost unwatchable by the yelling and screaming. It has a couple of cool shots, and I honestly think those carry the movie. I watched it once, never again, just do not understand the hype. Definitely a hot take, my friend. I think I said pretty much everything I had to say about Texas Chainsaw earlier in the video, but yeah, it's the characters, I mean, they really are there to just be as average as possible to be put through a terrible experience, and I think that the movie, the reason why it works for so many people is because it feels like an experience. It feels like you're really shooting out in the middle of nowhere. It feels grimy. It feels uncomfortable. It feels like something that could actually happen. The yelling and screaming of the dinner sequence actually really does work for me because I feel the horror. I feel the terror. It doesn't feel fake. It doesn't feel forced. It feels like she's really screaming for her life. So it works for me. So, yeah, I can't agree with that one. I really do think that the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the greatest of all time. Green Man OG says that Son of Godzilla is underrated. Gamera vs. Zigra is the funniest Gamera movie, and all of the Heisei Godzilla movies feel like the same movie with the exception of Godzilla 1984 and Godzilla vs. Biollante, and that's why I prefer the Showa era of Godzilla movies more. Even if I think none of the Heisei Godzilla movies are bad, it feels like I'm going through the motions over and over again. And I think the Puppet Master Axis trilogy is decent. Those are not the worst Puppet Master movies. I'm not well versed on Puppet Master, but I am very well versed on Godzilla. I do prefer the Showa era, but for me, a lot of that is nostalgia and the fact that I watched those movies when I was a kid, and they're very, very comforting to me. I love the Heisei series. I get that some of them feel a bit similar, but I think that they all have enough good in them that they're all worth watching. And the thing that I love about the Heisei series is that it's really, other than the MonsterVerse now, it really is the only Godzilla series that feels like it actually has a solid continuity. It has some recurring characters. It has a lot of the same feelings and the same vibes to it. And it leads to a conclusion with Godzilla vs. Destroya that I think is great. So you have, Godzilla 1984. Well, really, I mean, Godzilla 1954 is still canon in the Heisei series. But then 84 reboots it. You get cool original new monsters like Biollante, and then every old school monster it brings back, it does something creative and different with it, like Mecha King Ghidorah or adding in Batra. The Heisei series was first to introduce Mechagodzilla being controlled by humans and piloting it like a Gundam. And then it ends with Destroya, which I think is great. So I love the Heisei series, but yes, I do like the Showa era more. Des Young says, for me, I would have to be that the zombie genre is overrated, or at least the hype was overwhelming. I feel like Trick or Treat embodies the holiday of Halloween better than the Halloween franchise. Could still watch Halloween during the Halloween time. But if someone wants to pay their dues and feel the holiday spirit, I feel it's best to watch Trick or Treat during that time. I definitely get where you're coming from. For me, I don't think it's that the zombie genre is overrated. I think it's oversaturated. I think there was a time period between the 2000s and the 2010s where there were just so many zombie movies that it got ridiculous, and the genre was overplayed, and they were all doing the same things. You had a zombie movie come out every other week, and then you had The Walking Dead was in its in its heyday, and you had just so much zombie material that it got exhausting. But I think the zombie genre is great, and there always are great zombie movies coming out, but there was definitely a time period there where it was like, it was too much. And yeah, Trick or Treat definitely feels more like a Halloween movie in the spirit of the holiday. Like every single shot, every single scene in that movie is filled with jack-o'-lanterns and people in costumes and orange and black, and like that movie is just soaking in Halloween. It's like Halloween, the franchise with Michael Myers. Yeah, it takes place on Halloween, but like, the streets of Haddonfield are pretty average, normal looking streets, right? Like, it's not like crazy decorated as Halloween. But Trick or Treat is just like going 1000%, dialing up to 11. Every single shot and image of that movie is just pure Halloween. Nimbus says the straight to DVD Hellraiser movies are better than the originals. I feel like you're just doing that one to fuck with me. I don't know if that's a real opinion. I'm going to need some kind of explanation because I don't understand. Let's see. All of mine are Halloween related. Fernando says, Laurie is the single most overrated final girl in all of horror history. Never beat Michael once. And when we thought that she did, finally, in an alternate timeline no less, it wasn't really him. I do not acknowledge the new trilogy, much like the most recent Star Wars trilogy. Also, Halloween is not a slasher. Interesting. It turned into one by copying more successful franchises later, but the original is not a slasher. The Halloween franchise is the horror equivalent to the Fast and Furious movies. They just keep making it more grandiose after the original and never recaptured the feel of the first one. Part 2 was close, but you could already see them moving in different directions by then. Well, for your first point on Laurie Strode, I've always said that Laurie doesn't become a great character until Halloween H2O. The first two Halloween movies, she's fine. She's not a bad character, but I don't think she really comes into her own and becomes great until H2O. And then Resurrection just shat all over that and destroyed it. And I always thought that Jamie was a more compelling protagonist because she's just this frightened little girl in this experience that, to me, adds a little bit more terror and a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more heart maybe to the franchise. So I've always kind of liked Jamie a little bit more than I like Laurie. And I always wanted Jamie to get her due and have Daniel Harris come back and play an adult version of Jamie fighting Michael, but it looks like we'll never get that. Closest we got was the Rob Zombie movies. As far as Halloween is not a slasher, that's a bold take. I get where you're coming from because that was kind of before slasher was a term as we know it. But if you look at Halloween and its structure, it follows the formula. Like, the reason why slasher movies have a formula is because of movies like Halloween. So even if it was not intended or invented to be a slasher, it set a template that became what slashers are. So inevitably, it is a godfather of the slasher genre, whether it was intending to or not. All right, Adil says, I've recently started to hate the final girl in horror movies. Maybe it's because it's used so often in popular horror movies. I hate the soundtrack or sounds in general that slowly build up before jump scares. Makes it predictable and ruins the jump scare. Yeah, you know, what I hate is fake jump scares where they just, there's nothing actually there and they're just building up the music and a big shocking sound effect to have absolutely nothing happen. Sometimes that can be okay, I guess, but yeah, that really is a pet peeve of mine as well. As far as Final Girls, it's a trope that I love. Is it a trope? Absolutely, but it is one that I love. Give me a good Final Girl or Final Boy. There needs to be more Final Boys, more Ashes. Mac Daddy Snuggles says, I think it's ridiculous people still try to pretend Jason isn't a Deadite. He's doing this on purpose. When it's been very clearly shown via the presence of the Necronomicon, while also being something confirmed by the director. Halloween is the best slasher movie ever made. There hasn't been a good slasher movie made in close to 3 decades. Terrifier doesn't count as a slasher series. It's more comparable to torture porn. Oh, man. Okay, let's start with the first one, shall we? Once again, no, Jason is not a Deadite. And I never even really understood why people would even want him to be, because here's the main thing. Like, going past all of the lore reasons that I can get into to explain why he's not a Deadite, let's just start with just this very basic fact. Is that, do you really want Jason's lore to be dependent on another franchise? Like, to me, that takes agency away from Jason. It stops Jason from being something unique. I want Jason to be Jason Voorhees, not dependent on an established piece of fiction from another franchise. Like, it reminds me back when they were coming up with ideas for Freddy versus Jason back in the day, and there's a lot of different scripts and stuff that were floating around at the time where they were trying to connect the two on a deeper level. Like, they were trying to make Freddy Krueger one of the camp counselors at Crystal Lake, or in one of the versions, Freddy was banging Jason's mom and some shit. Like, the more that you connect these things together, the less special they are individually. Jason coming back from the dead, or, you know, surviving the drowning and then growing up in the woods in the first couple of movies, then being killed and then being resurrected into the zombie Jason that we know and love in part 6. All of that stuff is very unique to Jason. If you retroactively take that away and retcon it and say that, oh, Jason is alive because of the Necronomicon, that takes all of the agency and uniqueness away from Jason being his own special entity and now has to tie in his origins with another franchise. And something about that I hate. I love Evil Dead. Evil Dead is my favorite horror franchise of all time, but it doesn't need to be, you know, it can be in the same universe. It can exist in the same world, but it doesn't need to tie into the lore of Jason or Freddy or any other horror character. They can be their own unique entity. And as far as Jason being a Deadite is concerned, let's go over it once again. This all comes from a scene in Jason Goes to Hell where a character sees the Necronomicon in Jason's mom's house. Now, there is nothing in the movie that explains that Jason is a Deadite. There is no explanation. There is no exposition. Sorry. There is nothing that anybody says or does in the movie to imply this. All you see is a shot of the Necronomicon. Now, the behind the scenes reasons for this was that the director of Jason Goes to Hell got a copy of the Necronomicon from Sam Raimi on the set of Army of Darkness, and he threw it in Jason Goes to Hell. But it's not something he was technically supposed to do because legally the same company, I think New Line, did not own any of the rights to Evil Dead. So like legally they could not connect the two franchises. And I could be wrong about this, but to my understanding, they didn't even realize Like the studio heads didn't even realize what was in the movie. They just kind of went with it. They were like, whatever, so like legally it couldn't even happen anyway. But anything about it being in there of what the director said or about what people come up with is all headcanon. There's nothing in the movie that explains anything about the Necronomicon, what it is. There's no name drop. There's no title drop. There's nothing that explains it. So it's literally just a quick shot of the Necronomicon and nothing else. To me, in my mind, it was just a fun little cameo and it meant nothing. But because it's in there now for the last however many 30 years, now there's been this whole confliction of like, oh, Jason's actually a Deadite. And then being an Evil Dead fan, I mapped this all out on the timeline board. If you actually look at it, like there's nowhere the Necronomicon could have actually showed up at that location at that point in time in continuity. And yes, I know there's 3 Necronomicons in Army of Darkness. Still, it just doesn't make any sense. And if it did, Jason's mom bringing him back from the dead, wouldn't she have known that he was alive? Where the whole point in the first Friday the 13th movie is that she was killing people because her son drowned and she had no idea that this happened. And you could say like, oh, maybe she just didn't know that it would work. But once again, you're going down this rabbit hole of just headcanon after headcanon after headcanon. Not to mention, Deadites are demon possession. So do we want to say that Jason himself is not even Jason and it's actually a demon controlling Jason? Not to mention the fact that Jason doesn't act in any way, shape, or form like any Deadite we've ever seen before, because Deadites tend to mock their victims. They torment them, they speak, they have vocabulary, whereas Jason doesn't. Also, it seems to be that the Jason in the movies that we've seen so far kills for the specific reason of keeping people out of his territory of Crystal Lake. So he has his own specific agenda. So why would a demon from the Necronomicon, summoned from the Necronomicon that is now possessing Jason, why would they have the same tendencies and motivations and predispositions as Jason has, being obsessed with his mom and what she meant to him and everything? It doesn't make any sense for the movies that come afterwards, like Freddy versus Jason, that goes into his psychology, seeing visions of his mother, because why would a Deadite care? And if you're saying, well, it's a specific type of possession from the Necronomicon, again, you're going into all headcanon. None of that is explained in the movie. None of that is talked about in the movie. You have to make giant leaps in order for it to work. And if you say, okay, the director of Jason Goes to Hell, Adam Marcus, said that Jason's a Deadite. Okay, well, at that point, now you have to consider that any Friday the 13th movie made after Jason Goes to Hell can once again retcon the lore. Because if we allow the director of Jason Goes to Hell, which, by the way, I'm sure he's a cool dude in real life, but just as far as the movie is concerned, if we allow him to change all of the established lore thus far and now accept that to be the canon of the series, then that is a precedent that any director or any writer after that point can also retroactively change the lore. So all it takes is one person writing a script to say he's not a Deadite, and now everybody that believes he's a Deadite would have to automatically change their opinion and then go with the new established lore. Or you could do what I do and go by what the movies themselves show you in those first couple films, where it seems like Jason is surviving out on his own in 2, 3, and 4. He's killed. By the way, in Jason Goes to Hell, the bounty hunter's like, Jason can only be killed by a Voorhees. So if we're assuming that Jason's mom used the Necronomicon to bring him back to life, then he would have that magical power to begin with in the first 4 movies. And he wasn't killed by a Voorhees. He was killed by Tommy Jarvis. So that doesn't make any sense. Also, when he died in part 4, there was no strange worm that came out of his mouth to go around possessing people, something that only happened in Jason Goes to Hell. I could go on and on. Anyways, to not make this video go any longer than it already is, Jason is not a Deadite, and I hate that movie so goddamn much. Most specifically for the reason of the confusion between Jason being a Deadite. Solid Gold says Terrifier movies are dull, lack charm, and have no staying power after you've seen the gore. I disagree with this just for the fact that you see Art the Clown everywhere, and he's not always covered in gore. It seems to be that people really enjoy the character, not just the gore, along with Sienna as well. So I think it does have some staying power beyond the gore for sure. Problematic Biospirit says, I watched Monster Island. It's a new AMC original horror movie, and I thought it was a decent B movie. I have not watched it, so I can't say on that one. Tom Savini's Night of the Living Dead 1990 remake is actually a pretty good movie and is only hated on because the original exists and would probably be an 8.5 out of 10. Did you hear that the truly uncensored 4K release is coming? You'll have to review it. You know what's funny is another one of my unpopular opinions is I don't love the Tom Savini Night of the Living Dead movie. I have a lot of problems with it, actually, but a lot of people love it, and a lot of people like it more than the original, which is crazy to me. However, having said that, I am totally interested in checking out the uncensored version on 4K. I actually went to a horror con last year, and Tom Savini was talking, and he was saying how he wanted the opening of the movie to be black and white and phase into color and all the different things that he was trying to do, that he had a lot of limitations making it. So I'd be totally down to watch and check out and talk about, the uncensored version if I can get my hands on it. NBR says Halloween 1, 2, and H2O are the canon that matters. I'm with you, but I love Halloween 4 and 5. I can't lie. I do like the Jamie Lloyd story, so I would add those in there too. Aji Dio Gotti says Junji Ito's work. What about it specifically? I like it. I'm a fan of Junji Ito. I'd like to see some more adaptations, but then again, after Uzumaki, maybe not. John Veras says the latest Hellraiser movie is really good. How come no one talks about it? Probably because, like me, most people haven't seen it, but I am going to be making a Hellraiser video soon, so I will have to watch it in the near future. Alan Wake says Freddy beat Jason in Freddy vs. Jason. The Chucky TV show is actually really good. Halloween Kills is the best of the new trilogy. So, yes, agree with the last part. I would say that, again, my only issue with Freddy vs. Jason is the last 30 seconds where I wish they didn't have Freddy wink at the camera. I would have been fine with Jason definitively winning, but yeah, there's that. And Chucky TV show is good, but it kind of lost me after the first season. Season 2 and 3 both have good things in them, but I think the first season was the peak of it. Horoscope says, Seed of Chucky is good as hell. As a genderqueer person myself, has good non-binary representation for the time. I think its biggest crime is just how much the movie takes place in the same house. I mean, I can understand with the representation and that sort of vibe of the movie, resonating with it and stuff. And that's totally cool. For me personally, Seed of Chucky is, oh my God. For me, it's just a little bit too wacky, a little bit too silly, too much in the comedy section. I'm not a fan of Glenn personally as a character. Nothing against the representation aspect of it, but just as a character, they just annoy me. So not my favorite. It has some decent moments in it, and for like a guilty pleasure watch, it's fine. But yeah, definitely my least favorite Chucky movie. Jason Voorhees says, forgive me everyone, but the first original Friday the 13th isn't a very good film. Sorry, Mom. There's no denying part 4 and part 6 are the peak of Friday the 13th. I just find the first one really boring. The first one's a very different entity. I think nowadays we're so accustomed to Jason that you want Jason in your Friday the 13th movie. But when the original came out, none of that stuff was established yet. So the first one is meant to be more of like, you don't know who the killer is. You don't even see Mrs. Voorhees until the final scene. So it's a whole different vibe, and also limitations with budget. It's boring. Yes, it is at times, but a lot of that is because they just didn't have money and they were trying to pad out the runtime for 90 minutes. You know what I mean? Mouthhood says, look, I know it's going to be controversial, but I don't think Halloween Ends is a bad movie. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. About to be bombarded with a lot of people about this. Yeah, well, I've gone into why I don't like it earlier in the video, but yeah, I mean, if you like it, man, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a well-made movie. I think it's a very well-made movie, but yeah, it just doesn't do it for me. Sweet Pluto Sauce says, A24 horror movies are just J-horror 90s/early 2000s movies gone mainstream. That's a fun take. I kind of like it. I kind of dig it. A24 has kind of lost me, though, in recent times. I don't remember the last great one that I liked. Let's see. Discount Michael Chiklis says, hot take, Freddy's Revenge over part 4 and 6. I don't think that's so much of a hot take. A lot of people do like Nightmare 2. I would put 4 above it, but it would be 4 then 2, so pretty close. Jay Thompson says, as much as I love Tony Todd and no smoke to him, he was wasted in Candyman. The character makes no sense. He got killed by a bunch of racist white people. So instead of getting revenge on them, he haunts the hood, murdering them and random innocent people instead. They should have done a movie where he got revenge on his murderer. Forgive me if I get the lore wrong, but I don't think Candyman doesn't choose who his victims are. He does based upon, how they say his name, Candyman, multiple times, right? It's a little bit more like a fairy tale. He becomes like a fairy tale figure, essentially. So it's not really about vengeance or anything personal with him, I don't think. My Candyman knowledge is limited because I've seen the first movie a couple of times, but I haven't really checked out the entire franchise. But I'm pretty sure the woman that he haunts in the first movie is specifically because she called him, like she summoned him forth. So although he does have a tragic origin, I don't think it plays into the reason why he kills, or maybe somebody can correct me on that one, but that's what I remember from it. Let's see. Dumb Dad Joke says Scream 5 and 6 are my favorite in the franchise. You must be a Melissa Barrera fan, so there's that. I mean, because she's not in the other ones, so I can't think of any other reason why. Original paranormal and supernatural horror needs to steer clear away from copying the visuals of The Exorcist, as the visual tropes for erratic body movements and scarred faces are quite tired and at the point of parody. Although a revolutionary depiction for the time and should be the visual representation of demons in the Exorcist franchise, the fact that almost every film dealing with demonic horror or supernatural has copied the aesthetics without the same charm. It doesn't add realism to have every possession victim act like Reagan in a film unconnected to the Exorcist. It simply reminds the audience of the film of the film inspiration. Devil horror should be more willing to explore other aspects of Abrahamic mysticism and other religions. For example, this is why I enjoyed Nosferatu's 2024 representation of the supernatural over Hell House. Although both certainly had influences of The Exorcist, the possession aspects were paired with the linkage to disease and very physical manifestations of the demonic, with Hell House using very surface level representation of demonic influence. The Ritual 2017 use of Norse mythology and nature metaphysics was far more creative and effective at conveying an unknowable supernatural evil than another contortionist could. Basically, all that comes down to, yeah, they copy The Exorcist too much. Which, yeah, I agree. I do think that if you're making a demonic entity in your movie, make it have some kind of signature aspect to it. Make it have some specifics that the possessed kind of follow through with instead of just doing The Exorcist. So, yeah, I agree with that. King Yuma says, Halloween Ends is a great movie. Don't really care that Michael Myers is basically a side character in it. Well, I've said my piece on Halloween Ends. You're definitely not alone because other people have agreed with you. Burned by Hellfire says, I don't understand what the hype for the Black Phone was, but I didn't think it was that good, especially for Blumhouse to try to bank on a second one. I remain open-minded for the Black Phone 2 nonetheless. I don't care how off the wall that 28 years later ending was. I loved it. Top film of the year for me. I agree with you on the Black Phone. I was very underwhelmed with it. And I love Ethan Hawke. Ethan Hawke is one of my favorite actors of all time. Love that dude. And he was good in it. But yeah, people were hyping up the Black Phone like it was like an amazing horror film. Probably the way that, I guess maybe it's the opposite opinion that I have on Hereditary, where I think it lives up to all the hype. Black Phone, to me, I watched it. I thought it was okay. Yeah, like you said, it's a middle of the road movie. It's not bad. It's just, I just don't see the hype for it either. So yeah, I'm with you on that one. I thought Black Phone was just okay. James Johnson says, hot take, the Scream franchise, while I like 1 and 2, was wildly overrated series that relies too much on slasher meta / tropes. I mean, well, yeah, but the whole series kind of plays on the tropes, and like that's the whole idea behind it. I think you might be kind of aligned with an earlier comment about how meta horror has kind of taken over a little bit too much. It's a little bit now meta horror has kind of become the cliche. Kotar says, Return of the Living Dead is great, but Chuck and Casey serve zero purpose in it. You probably have to look up their names. That's how irrelevant they were. That's funny. Chuck is the one, he's the dude with the boombox, right? And then I'm assuming Casey is the other girl he was trying to get with. Yeah, they're just kind of there. Don't they, wait, aren't they the ones that make the phone call to the Pentagon or whatever? I might be misremembering that. I don't know. Okay, we're almost done here. We almost made it to the bottom. I really wanted to get everybody's comment in. So let's move through. Let's barrel to the end. Caramel Princess says the modern It movies are better than the mini series TV series. Freddy Krueger is not scary. Scream 3 is underrated, and The Exorcist is not the best horror movie of all time. For the first one, I kind of agree with you. Like, other than Tim Curry as Pennywise, I do think everything in the It movies were better. And they're still not perfect, but I really do think that, that the 90s miniseries was such a cultural moment. Everybody remembers it. Everybody that was there, everyone remembers Tim Curry as Pennywise. But if you take Tim Curry into consideration, like, every other aspect of the It story was done better in the movies. So I agree with that. Freddy Krueger is not scary. I mean, I disagree. I think the idea of a demonic entity that can kill you in your dreams, and if you die in your sleep, you die in real life, and in your nightmares, it plays on your fears and insecurities and all of that stuff. I think that that's pretty damn scary. So it's just, as the sequels went on, Freddy got goofier over time, and it kind of lost the fear aspect. Scream 3 underrated. I always hear that, but every time I watch it, I just can't agree. And then Exorcist, not the best horror movie. I can understand why people say it is, but it depends. It depends on your taste and your preferences. There's movies I would put over it for sure. So yeah, I agree with that point. Rhea Mukwea says, I don't know if it's a trope, but I hate the token black guy / token Asian guy characters that are just brain dead with no survival instincts. People having sex while a killer is on the loose. Villain magically has bad aim against the final character after they've been perfect aim throughout the entire movie. Yeah, so the first one, like the token black character trope, I feel like that is something that's been done away with. That's something you experience probably more in like the early 80s. So it's pretty much, I feel like that's been rectified for the most part. People having sex while a killer's on the loose. Yeah, dumb. But I feel like in a lot of the movies, they aren't aware of that. Like, it's kind of their obliviousness that gets them killed. And as far as like, yeah, the villain being able to kill everybody perfectly through the whole movie, and then all of a sudden struggling with the final character, it is kind of silly. Depends on the movie. Sometimes I can go with it. Other times it does make me roll my eyes. Lane says, I swear I'm not saying this just to mess with you. I've always felt this. Not a fan of the Evil Dead franchise. I don't like any of them. Wow. In fact, I think the original is a piece of shit with dumbass characters I couldn't care less about. Yeah, I mean, obviously I completely disagree. Evil Dead's my favorite horror movie of all time. I don't think the characters in Evil Dead are overly smart or overly dumb. I think they're just average, normal, early 80s people that are in their like early 20s. Like, I think they're perfectly average in the best way possible. And Ash has to become that badass over the course of 2 movies. He has to grow into a badass. He has to be traumatized into becoming a badass. But hey, man, the Evil Dead movies aren't for you. They aren't for you. I don't know what to tell you. I guess you have to watch something else. Does says, horror movies are the worst genre of movie, in my opinion. I heavily disagree. I think horror allows access to for creators to do stuff that they are limited by in other genres. And, I think a friend asked me once why I love horror movies. And there's tons of reasons, but like, I think I ultimately came down to is that it gives you a sense of catharsis. It gives you a sense of being able to go through this horrific or dangerous or exciting experience vicariously through another character. You don't have to experience the trauma yourself firsthand, but you can go through these dangerous events, go through that arc of survival, go through that arc of becoming a badass, and get to live out those experiences where, you're facing these unstoppable odds, these vicious killers or these monsters or these aliens, and you're able to kind of persevere and come out on the other side. And there's a sense of catharsis where you're able to overcome something horrific and still make it out on the other side. Horror has always been a genre that's not afraid to push the boundaries. It's not afraid to put characters you wouldn't normally see in a mainstream movie in the lead role. Sometimes it's just the feeling of watching somebody overcome unstoppable odds and somehow figure it out. And sometimes that can help, you know? Sometimes being able to express these fears, anxieties, and other stuff that horror movies give you is a good way to release that kind of energy. You know, some people like being scared because they are scared in life, and watching a horror movie is a way for you to express that energy and get it out there. So there's lots of great reasons why people love horror movies, but some people, you know, never will, and that's okay. I mean, everybody, like I said, has their own opinion. But you know, I think musicals are way worse. Scream 2, even with all of Scream 3's continuity and writing issues, is the least entertaining of the original trilogy for me. Ari Aster is a visually stunning director, but a boring storyteller. I still haven't seen Beau is Afraid, and I didn't see Eddington. I love Hereditary, and I liked Midsommar a lot. So for me, he's at least 2 and 2, but I haven't seen his other 2 movies. And yeah, personally, I think Scream 3 is way more boring than Scream 2. Scream 3 has so many characters in it that I just do not care about at all. I like the college campus setting of Scream 2. I like a lot about Scream 2. Warren Larby says, first Terrifier, not All Hallows Eve was the best. Felt like you needed a shower after watching it. Who needs the bullshit lore and fantastical elements? He's a fucked up clown. That's all I need to know. I mean, that's fair, but I like insane bullshit lore and fantastical elements. That's my thing. That's kind of my thing. So I dig it. But yeah, I mean, the first Terrifier is definitely an experience as well. Okay, getting down here to the final questions here. I'm running out of my voice. Jordan says, The Conjuring is extremely overrated. Saw the first 2 in theaters based off recommendations. And the first in particular was just another dime a dozen possession movie. Rest of the franchise is bottom tier horror. Interesting. I actually really like the Conjuring movies. And the thing about it is like, I'm not even big on ghost and paranormal movies. Like, that's not even one of my favorite genres, but I just think The Conjuring 1 and 2, at least, is able to do it really, really well. I like Conjuring 2 more than the first movie, so that's even a bigger difference in the comment. But yeah, I like the Conjuring movies work for me. I think they work for me a lot because of the characters too. I like Ed and Lorraine. I like that they feel like a real life couple. I like their dynamic together. You know, it adds that extra emotional element to it. So yeah, they work for me. Woods Gump says, hot take, Halloween Ends is literally Friday Part 5 story-wise, and it sucks. Well, I mean, other than, yeah, having a different killer, I can see that. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of either of those 2 movies. Noah Magnus says, Evil Dead 2013 is good, but overrated as hell. Maybe, but I still love it because, look, I wanted to hate that movie. I tell this story all the time because Evil Dead, the original, is my favorite horror movie, one of my favorite horror franchises. So I went into the Evil Dead remake wanting to hate it, and I came out of it thinking, damn, that was actually a really good movie. So it might be a little overrated because a lot of people say it's better than the original, and I'm just like, no, just not. I mean, it's better produced. I mean, it's more of a budget, you know what I mean? But there's a classic vibe about that original and the grittiness of it that I love. Kaki MF says, Hereditary is overrated, painfully slow movie that never manages to scare, not even once. Kind of answered that earlier, the reasons why I love it. But yeah, I do get told all the time that Hereditary is not that good, but whatever. It works for me. I love it. George Tolkien says, Jordan Peele's movies are mid as fuck. I still haven't seen Nope. I liked Get Out. I did think Get Out was a little bit overrated, but I liked it a lot. I liked Us, and I still haven't seen Nope. So I wouldn't say mid, but I'd say maybe a little overrated, sure. And then final hot take. We finally made it here. Nika Bosmit says, found footage over slashers. No. Anyways, guys, thank you for all of your submissions of your horror movie hot takes, underrated opinions, unpopular opinions. This was a lot of fun to do. You know, originally I wasn't going to do all of them. I was going to record for like an hour, but then I was like, you know what? Everybody that put in a comment, I wanted to give back to you guys, and I wanted to answer your comment. So I was like, fuck it. I'm going to do everybody. So I lost my voice. I went a little insane. Couple of rants here and there. But overall, I don't think a lot of these opinions were that bad, honestly. Like, even the ones I disagree with, I kind of get. So you guys did good, man. Thanks for sending them in. This was a lot of fun. If this video does well, we'll do more stuff like this. I'll try to come up with maybe like, I don't know, you guys come up with stuff too. You know, what's another type of hot take, or maybe other hot take or unpopular opinion videos. I don't know. We'll come up with something. But if you made it this far, if you made it to the end of the video, please give it a thumbs up to let me know that you liked it, and leave a comment to help it out, help the video out. Thanks for watching, guys. Thank you to everyone that sent in a comment. I appreciate it. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time.